Welcome everyone. This is a training video to walk through the Unified Insights district configuration and implementation data validation process that now needs to occur. I'm going to start with my same disclaimer. This video is used for training purposes only. We will not be looking at individual student data so that no FERPA violations are shown inside of here. We're going to be looking at the big broad data and show you how to look at it within your district and to drill down. We will not be drilling down here, but I'm going to show you how to so that you'll be able to when you start your validations. So what we're doing today, and I'm going to post this link to this spreadsheet here. Everyone should be familiar with this spreadsheet. This is the spreadsheet with the tabs at the bottom where we went through to make sure everybody had configured their single sign-on. I will say I've heard from a couple of districts who have now swapped to either Google SSO or Microsoft SSO in PowerSchool SIS, which means we will need to update your connections in here. So y'all will be getting emails from me soon. But we did all that. Remember, this is the tab of contacts that each district has identified, or if you didn't identify, I went into the education directory and pulled down who has been identified in there as either the tech contact, the PowerSchool contact, and the curriculum contact. I will say that for each district, as we start scheduling our data validation meetings, these are the people that are going to receive the email. So if you want to lay eyes on this spreadsheet one more time, and I'll keep throwing it into the chat, to make sure that you have somebody identified. You know, if it's just one person, that's fine. If it needs to be multiple, make sure the correct people are identified because all of these are going to receive the email about scheduling the meeting with the coaches. So what we're going to be doing next steps after I go through, how to drill down into the data here is that we're going to take this sheet, the 3 PowerSchool coaches, so you got Kendall, Quandria, and Caitlin, who are dividing the state up, and immediately after this are going to start sending out emails to districts to schedule a one-on-one meeting with you and with them to start your district config validations. So when we are inside of Unified Insights, we see lots of data, lots of dashboards, and Amy and Susan showed y'all how to navigate these beautifully, and I heard that y'all were very excited about the data that you saw because I mean this is some of the easiest reports that you're going to be able to pull. I will tell you, as far as correctness of these reports, when you look at pretty much the overview, anything not dealing with behavior you should be good with on the overview, and we'll look at each one of, like, we're going to go each one of these dashboards into them here in a minute. Enrollment should be good. Attendance should be pulling well. Behavior, we are still working on making sure the right codes are going into the right categories of these. So if you see some like weird ticks of numbers inside of behavior dashboards, that could very well be. There are going to be some things I have you check, but we are still working on behavior. Academics should be good after you do your data configuration meeting with the coaches. So when we set up the academics dashboards, especially when it comes to those who are triggering from the grades inside of PowerSchool SIS, we kind of went off of a traditional mapping of grades. So, a 99 is an A, an 87 is a B, so forth. There were some grades that fell outside of that traditional 100-point grade scale norm that some of y'all have, like some of you have created grade scales where it might say 100-A, and it didn't know how to interpret those. So part of your academic dashboards might not be pulling all of the students' data because you have some unmapped grade scale numbers. I'll show you an example of one here in just a minute. So part of what the coaches are going to be doing when they sit down with you, there are 2 really big ones that they're going to need to look at with you. It's going to need to be course subjects and scale abbreviations. So I'm just going to pop in, and y'all do not see this district config. This is not something that the districts can see. It's only something that we can see here at the state level. So I'm going to go pick a random. So Coffee County, you just hit the lucky wheel. So as you'll see right here in the academic section, when it came to all of the courses that it actually mapped to the right type of, is it a math, is it an elective, is it an English, is it a science? And we had them map it based on credit types that we have distinguished here at the State Department. So we used a lot of the backdoor SCED numbers, credit types, and got as much matched up automatically as we could. But after it went through all of that logic, each district has a very small handful of courses that it didn't know where they needed to go. So we're going to need your input on what these courses need to be. So computer science, well, I know it's a computer science. Credit recovery history, so I know that's going to need to be a social studies class. Elementary, not sure what that course is. So if you have some type of course named elementary, we need to know what that needs to be mapped at. Essentials geometry, so that's going to be a mathematics. Introduction to networking, is that going to be career tech? And so we'll talk with you through those, and we might have you to check what courses you are using in your database to make sure you're using current course numbers and make sure that was not the issue for why it did not map. So course subjects and then scale abbreviations. Let's see if they have any inside of here. So you'll see that the majority of them map, but then we have some that didn't map. So apparently in some grade scale that has been created, and it could have been that maybe they were creating a test grade scale, but it's not really attached to anything, so it doesn't know what to do with them. There's some dots, and it's okay to leave things not mapped, because if you leave things not mapped, it just means it's not going to pull into those data dashboards. So if you have dots, you might not want to have those mapped when the coaches talk to you about them. A G, maybe they have a G that means something very specific in their district. So we'll need to know when we're mapping these, are they to the traditional A, B, C, D, F? It even gives a 1, 2, 3, 4 to standards, pass, incomplete, no credit, or not mapped. So when it comes to standards, you can do the 1, 2, 3, 4, but I need to put this disclaimer out there. When it looks at these 1, 2, 3s, 4s, we all know you might actually have kids in middle and high school who make an average of a 1, 2, 3, 4, who just don't do anything whatsoever in class. I know those students are few and far between, but I do know that they exist. Just keep in mind that they might accidentally get roped into the 1, 2, 3, 4s of standards, or the standards 1, 2, 3, 4 can get roped into those numerics of F's inside of there. And so you might make the decision to not map those at all. So this is a conversation that the PowerSchool coaches are going to have with you. So Stephanie just asked, how do we get to this screen? You won't have this screen. We just see it at the state level. So when they reach out to you to make those scheduling appointments, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to sit down with you and they're going to look at your configuration for your course subjects, your scale abbreviation. They're going to look at your schools to make sure that we have all of the correct schools mapped in here. Some districts had asked during the training, why are my graduated students showing in here? Can I get them out of it showing? Yes, you can. This is how we can turn schools on and off of populating inside of there. Now, one other question that came up pretty heavily inside of the training is, well, I have an STC, I don't want them showing in there. Well, we don't need to exclude those. Those need to be shown so that the STC administrators can log in and see their data at the STC. If you don't want to see them when you're pulling your school or district data, then you'll just need to filter them out by selecting schools, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. We'll also be checking student status. Pretty much everybody should have no rows to show on this, because we map, these are our enrollment codes to make sure that they're going to either withdrawn, enroll, graduated, dropout, make sure the codes are marked. And because we have a state mandated code set, it made it very easy. However, a few districts, well, it's more than a few, it was quite a bit districts, had, there's one of the dropout codes that has a dash in it. And there is a coding issue right here where if a dash is shown in any name, you get like a whole gibberish of like A's and tildes and stuff. PowerSchool's aware of that, and they're going to fix that code. So we might have to map those. So that's going to be part one of those meetings. As the coaches meet with y'all and check through these, they will check these off so that we know where we're at in our state run to make sure we have everybody taken care of. So when you're in these dashboards, if you go to any of the academics and you're like, oh, well, I don't see as many A's as I think I should, or B's, or things such as that, it could be that it's because we haven't mapped all of your grade scales yet. So hold off on checking those until after you meet with the coaches. For assessments, we are still loading assessment data inside of here. I had a few people to reach out, especially about iReady, saying that the old, like last year's data is in there, that the current year data is not in there yet. And that was the very last one that they started working with. So they're still in process pretty much on a lot of these inside of here. So when you go to these dashboards, if you don't see current year in there yet or not, just hold on those, because I know this is still a work in progress. One of the other big questions that we're in training are, well, how is this connecting to the programs? Like, we're a STAR district. How is it getting all of the data? Well, it's not getting all of the data. The data that it is getting are those beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year assessments that we have to do for the Literacy Act. That's what's being pulled inside of here for now, because the vendors send those files to us here at the state, and then we take those files and send them to PowerSchool to ingest inside of these databases. Same thing with our ACAP scores, our AP scores, our WorkKey scores, and everything. So as those get more data loaded into them and finalized, I will be using my Monday newsletter to communicate when more data is coming in, or when we have all of the data finalized for those for you to start reviewing the assessment dashboards. You can go ahead and start seeing what's in there now, but to know that it's completely final, watch that newsletter and in the Unified Insights section for those updates. Digital learning's all dealing with the Schoology uploads. There were 3 districts. It was Covenant, it was Access, and there was one more, and it just left the top of my head, where they did not get the data loaded before we started training. However, we have a pretty big update coming to Unified Insights. And in fact, if y'all are subscribed to the status board, you should have just received an email alerting you that Unified Insights is going to go down for the state this weekend so that they can apply the update. When they apply the update, those 3 districts who were not getting any data for the Schoology information will start populating on Monday, because they're going to do the connector for those. For Literacy Act, we are in the process of getting these built out, and a lot of districts are already seeing data come in. So if you have all of your data inside of SIS like you were supposed to have by middle of August, you should start to see some of your retention information, your 3rd grade data, your good cause, the reading deficiency. So everything that was marked on that Literacy Act tab or page inside of SIS that we've had in is now starting to feed inside of here. And I will tell you, there are, as we go through these screens, there are some retention information that's showing up for this year already that we need districts to take a look at. And that's one of the things I really like about this. You're going to find some data errors in SIS by looking at these dashboards. So now that we've kind of had that big overview, and just by the way, if you want to know what teachers see, this is the set of dashboards that teachers see when they log in for their students. Okay, they don't get to see all of these essentials dashboards that an admin or front office would see, but classroom is what teachers see. And yes, it is live, and teachers can go into this in the same way. So just as a reminder, and let's see if it didn't log me out of Pilot, that when you log into this, you are logging in from the flyout window, and I don't have it connected to Pilot. I would have to be in a real district to show you this. But you click on the Unified Insights from within there, and y'all, that flyout is also over in Power Teacher. When a teacher first logs in to PowerSchool, that flyout is on that main screen, on the same screen where they kind of go to take attendance or choose the class to take attendance. They fly it out there and click in the same way that you do as an administrator. So let's get down to the nitty gritty, and hopefully everybody has something to write with, even though we are recording this, because here's where I want you to start making your list of what we need you to check and be ready to give us feedback from in those district config meetings. So when you first log in and you get to this performance indicator screen, you're going to see, of course, your map right here, but I want you to pay attention to this demographic information. So I want you to look at the total. Now this is going to be total enrolled as of last night. So very similar to AIM. Each night, Unified Insights goes and ingests all the data from your servers. Okay. So, and I don't know exactly what time it is, but What you see here should be the number of enrolled students. And guys, that's all students. If they have an enrollment status, so that's going to be truly enrolled with an E status. It's going to be across enrolled. Those kids are going to count inside of here. So if you're a district that allows kids to cross enroll like into a tech center or a thing such as that, you're going to see those kids listed here as well. Okay, so you want to double check and see that your count totals look right. If they don't, you're going to need to let the PowerSchool coaches know, and we'll need to see if we can figure out what kids are missing or what kids are being added, okay, that shouldn't be. This right here is a big one because I'm looking at it from a state perspective right now. Yes, school 4999 kids count also. It's all kids enrolled into the district. Right here, do you see these dashes? If you log in and you see dashes, that means you have students in SIS that you do not have the race data filled out on. All of these kids need to have that information. Remember, that's a state reporting field. So one of the first things I want you to look at, number one, is your total. Number two, do you have a dash when you log into your district? I can tell you across the state, I've got 27,000 dashes out there. And we could have that many kids moving on a given day and you just hadn't got to them. But you want to look at that. You want to kind of look down at your racial breakdown, and we've got those enterprise reports that can help you kind of sort those racial breakdowns to see if these numbers look correct. If we have kids that are not counting, let us know, but these pretty much are spot on the individual districts that we've cherry picked. This right here is an issue. There was a glitch in PowerSchool a while back that accidentally put a prefer not to answer that's on the staff page on the student page. And they did it just long enough for a few districts to actually enter that on student data. So if you have any students with this prefer not to answer, you need to click on that number so you can see who the names are, and you need to go through and add those in there. Gary said, what if your dashes are cross LEA enrolled? Do you fix? So Gary, you can go ahead and pop it in there if you want to, but I will say this, part of the big cross enrollment fix that we have going on with PowerSchool is to actually get all of the demographic data to actually move with the kids and get contacts to move and get the correct grade level to move when they're cross enrolled. So if your dashes are cross enrolled students, those should natively fix once we get that update from PowerSchool. And I don't have an ETA on it. When I tell you we are hammering, and I know it's been 6 months since that cross LEA broke, we're still hammering with PowerSchool on that. When it comes to these, I know I've had a lot of people to want to know, Stacy, what are y'all using to determine EL, SPED, homeless? Like, where are those numbers coming from? So one of the things that I did, and if you are the tech director on the screen, you're going to get all gooey here in a second because I'm going to get real techie with folks. If you're not the tech director, don't worry. I'm going to break this down for you so you can see how we are actually doing the state logic for these. So I want to share this slideshow right here because this is the actual query that we are using, PowerSchool is using, that we gave them, of how to identify these students. What constitutes a student as receiving a flag of 504, a flag for EL, a flag, because when you go to the student profile and you have all those flags up there in the demographics, I can't click on a student profile on here. I'll get some screenshots for us later, but this is what gives them. So let's kind of go through these slowly. So first, for a student to be flagged as 504 for Unified Insights and have that indicator on their profile or be included in a list, we are looking at that S_AL STU Special Program X table and looking at the 504 spelled out eligibility field. So basically, this is saying from this table in this field, if the code is yes or yes, no plan, I want you to count them as long as, so it's got to be an and, their exit date is greater than or equal to the get date today, or the exit date is null, because we know that with 504, because it's not really mandated by the state, but you are able to put those 504 triggers inside of special programs. Districts have been doing 504 all kind of willy-nilly ways out there. People are checking the box yes. They are checking yes with plan. They're checking no. Some are putting dates in there. Some are not putting dates in there. So here's the criteria that has to be in place for them to count toward these 504 numbers. They have to have, when that 504 status in special programs, and I don't think I pull 504 on the special programs page. No, we'll just go ahead into special programs and show you. Ah, my screen keeps jumping. I think Mickey's got a 504. Yep. He has a 504 profile. So when it comes for, this, if I have this edit page right here, if I say that a student is yes or yes and no plan, and notice there's two of those, but it's this one without the dash. If they are marked as that or that, and they have an entry date, so they have to have a current entry date of, so it's got to be less than whatever, or, past whatever this is, and either has a forward-facing exit date that is not current yet or a null entry date or exit date, then they will be counted inside of here. Yeah, STCs are going to be included in these totals as well. So we'll talk about how to filter those out if you need to. Oops. Okay, so there's 504 logic. EL logic. So for the EL, we are doing exactly what AIM does, which for EL, you really only look at students who are a status 1 or 2, so a EL1 or EL2. All those others don't really go into this EL mixture inside of here. So as long as your EL status inside of special programs, and I'm going to cancel this because I believe I have Mickey with an EL status as well. So if I go to edit here, so if I get, an EL status of 1 or 2 on the student, and the entry date is between, or so today's sys date, so whatever the current date is between the entry date and the exit date, or this date, because, by 2099, they're still using it. Somebody's going to have to go change this logic. Then it will count that student as EL. So you only should be seeing your EL 1s and 2s as long as their current dates are inside of those program dates for your EL. So you should not expect to see any other students with a different EL status other than 1s and 2s. For gifted, you are looking at this table, special programs table, and we are looking at the actual status field of gifted. If they are marked active and is gifted is 1, then it is pulling that in there. And you should be able to actually see that in SIS. If I go to Mickey's state compliance page, oh, wrong one, federal programs, nope, special programs. You notice that we have this area right here. So active, status, and is gifted should be yes. So it's going to have that 1 0 kind of on the back side of it. So go back to my logic. If it meets those two criteria, they'll be pulled in as gifted. For IEP, same thing. We're looking for them on that special program page to be active and have a current IEP date. So in other words, if today's date, the SIS date in your computer is between their start date and end date, meaning that it's active, then yes, they will be pulled in as a special ed IEP student. And then the homeless query is the exact same query that's used for AIM, where you have to have a homeless type of verified. You have to have a residency status filled in. It cannot be null. And you have to have a valid school year of the current school year. And a lot of times we have districts that will even say in AIM, hey, all my homeless kids are not showing. And it's because they didn't change the school year and the valid school year, or they just did verified, but they didn't put a residency status in or something such as that. So those are the queries that are used to build those indicators to make sure you're getting the right counts. So what I want you to do is just kind of run some reports and see, do the numbers match up? And yes, if you have an STC, it's going to include those STC students in there. If you need to run it and not look at that, now I'm not going to drill down to a district, but let's say that I was in a district. So being because you put the last email, I'm going to say I'm in Tuscaloosa. So if I'm looking at the data as Tuscaloosa, what I can then do is go to school. Now, this is not going to make any sense for me showing here from the state level because it's going to show every school in the state. But if you go through and just click all of your schools except for your STC school, then it will reformat all of these numbers so that then you're looking at what you consider your district numbers inside of there. If you need to filter out and you don't want to look at pre-K, you can then take your filter for grade and choose everything except pre-K inside of there. That way you can narrow down. And remember, for anybody who went to the training, these filters are sticky. So if I don't want to look, and now I'm wondering, somebody's got a grade level of -9999. If you see, like in these filters, things that are not in our data code manual for grade levels, those are going to need to be addressed. I mean, somebody's got something attached or set up that we should not be. So let's just say I want to look at 6th grade. I'm just going to narrow this way down in the state. So if you, as you're going through to validate, if you're wanting to turn off STCs and some of these other groups that you don't really look at, you can do that. Also keep in mind, even your non-traditional students that are typically filtered out of AIM are going to be included in all of these counts because this looks at all of your enrollment. Because even though as far as accountability and reporting for state reports and federal reports, that's what AIM's for. I've had a lot of people say, is this going to replace AIM? No, it's not. It will be always be sister systems because AIM is going to be the official accountability reporting. These are your kids. Yes, we might only report on XYZ number of students, but you need to be aware of what's happening with all students that grace your doors of your school. And that's what this is for. So you can get true eyes on everything everywhere. So see now by looking at 6th grade, I've cut these numbers down to just 54,000 6th graders across the state. And every time you go through and swap dashboards, that's going to stick. And I will always be looking at it through a 6th grade lens, which is great for districts when y'all want to start looking at, I want to look at my SPED students and all of this data to see how my SPED or my EL or so forth are. Okay, so if you're wanting to exclude those out, you just filter them and then start looking at all your numbers. All right, so what all do we need to look at besides those numbers now that we know how to interpret those numbers? So on the performance indicator overview, whoops, for OSS rate, you can, again, drill down into that 18% and it'll list the kids and it'll tell you whether they have incidents or not. It's going to show every kid in that selection, but you can filter by the incident percentage within that spreadsheet and show all your higher ones or those who actually have numbers other than 0. Add it so that you can actually gauge to see if it's looking correct. Year-to-date attendance, these are very much in line. Chronic absenteeism, there are 2 metrics for chronic absenteeism, and we'll talk about them heavily when we get to that dashboard, but this is the federal chronic absenteeism number. So I want you to keep that in mind because that's how you'll use to gauge this, because I know this number has been flipping some folks out because it's pretty high right now, and I'll explain why that is. When it comes to absent yesterday, this is something to know. Number one, is your export actually happening every night like it should, and is it correct? If I were to click on these 3,500 students, it would list them. And if I would click one more time into one of the students' names and then go to their attendance information, I should see that yesterday they had an absence in there. Now, when it says yesterday, it's your last calendar date that you were in school. So it's looking at that. So you might see something on a Monday that said yesterday, but it doesn't mean on Sunday, it means on Friday. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind of how that works right there. But you would be able to see if this is calculating correctly if you drill down to a student and see that they have an absence code on their daily record for yesterday. Again, as we get the incidents verified and we're still loading up those codes and making all the matches there, then this right here will be able to be, solid in how you look at it. But it's a pretty good indicator as it is. I don't think that it's going to move your mountains all that much. Remember, if they didn't show you in training, which I know they did, you can turn off years if you want to just look at this year to see. And what this should be is each week of school, how many incidents you had in all. And guys, this is everything. This is local use. This is SIR. This is anything that you wrote inside of there. Every one of these numbers you can drill down into to see, was that correct? Did you actually put in, 400 incidents for sixth graders across the state during that first week of school? So that's the performance indicator dashboard. We recommend that you always drill into each of those. And here's the other thing. If you drill into one of these and it does not populate any data, make a list of any of these metrics that is happening to you on so that we can get those reported to PowerSchool. You do not need to put any tickets. All of your issues are going to be reported to the coaches and they're going to report back to me, and I'll be entering them in the JIRA board since we are still in implementation phases of PowerSchool. All right, let's go now to some of the individual dashboards. So let's click into the enrollment and go through those. And remember how I had that filter of sixth grade? So I'm still sticky. I'm looking at this straight through sixth grade lens across the state. So again, check your numbers. These should be very similar to what you saw on that very first dashboard in that big block. All right, how has our enrollment and exit numbers changed year over year? Now, for data on these first two bars, I'm going to say, y'all, that data is going to be as good as your transfer info pages are across the state. And I can say this, when we migrated from iNow to PowerSchool, the worst part of the migration in those files were the re-enrollments tables, because I know a ton of y'all are right now still cleaning up duplicate enrollment records and stuff like that from past years in iNow. So I'm going to tell you this, take these two columns right here for 1920 and 2021 with a grain of salt, unless you know you've really cleaned all of your overlaps up. From here, we're going to be pretty solid with one exception. And PowerSchool's aware of it, but they can't fix it until after the update that's run this weekend. There is an issue where they are not counting our no-shows that enter and exit on the same date before school in these numbers. So if you'll notice, it's not even popping any purple on here. But we all know there are some sixth graders across the state that were true no-shows with that NS code. So that is something they are still working on. So don't freak out if you don't see no-shows populating in your graphs. PowerSchool is still is going to have to recode that. And as soon as that is done, I will communicate that out on the weekly newsletter to let you know to start checking those numbers, and you should see those adjusting. What you do see as far as enrolled, dropout, and the rest of them should be showing accurately, unless it was done on a number on a date where it was the same first and last day. Everything else you should be good with. And so we say, pop into this year or pop into last year and see, if I've got 34 dropouts, look at those names and look at the list and see, did you actually have them as dropouts last year? Because it will keep that in there. Or do you see a code that they accidentally put in the wrong category that we need to get them to fix? Then we can. So just randomly select 5, 10 kids, pop them and see. All right, Kara, I don't even see it in the key. It says dropout. Yeah, it could be because they're still, because of that issue, working on that. And if you have any that are not configured, that would mean somebody's missing an entry exit date. I think we got all of those fixed across the state, but if you actually do get somewhere with a not configured, please let coaches know so we can start digging in to figure out where that data anomaly is in SIS so we can get that corrected for you. This is just going to show, excuse me, y'all, show you the counts over the years. We should be pretty solid on these because race is pulling in pretty spot on across the board. So you should be able to use this as a true metric right now. Same thing right here. You should be showing the number of students currently in each grade level. So what is it doing is it's looking at the number of students in that grade that is actively enrolled. Someone asked, should the enrollment numbers match AIM? Not exactly, because remember, AIM does not pull all of your students in. It doesn't pull in some of the non-traditional students, cross-enrolled students, things such as that. So you'll have to keep that in consideration if you're seeing a mismatch of them. One of the great things about these reports is that if you needed to, if you're like, hey, I don't know, something's wrong, I'm missing, 100 sixth graders or something like that. When you click in that bar and it goes to the list of sixth graders, remember that every one of these metrics has an export feature, and I can export that data once you get down into the spreadsheet view of this as a CSV file. If you needed to export that out of AIM, because they're both going to be in alphabetical order, you can then do a matchup, you could do a VLOOKUP, and you could find where the mismatch might occur to see who quickly is not in there, and then figure out why are they not showing. It could be that they withdrew. Maybe AIM is showing you kid that's withdrawn, whereas this right here is only going to be your active students right now. How many students have changed schools? So this is going to be school changes within your district. So if you're a small district that only has one middle, one high, one elementary, then you might not see metrics right here. But for districts that have 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and you want to know if they've been changing, this metric will tell you. And what it does is it reads from that transfer info screen. So if you've got your enrollment records correct as you're moving these kids, these metrics will show you how many times kids are moving within your district. I know the district that I came from, we have 3 primary schools, and it was like, which one are we going to attend this week? So you would see things like that inside of there. This is taking those SPED queries and it's telling you how many SPED were in school this year versus last year. And so you can take and look at those bars. And again, each one of them you can drill down and just see if those numbers look right to you, or if they don't, let's see if we can figure out what kids it might be excluding or including that you weren't expecting. But again, keep in mind, cross-enrolled and things such as that are going to be a part of this. This is going to show you each of your individual schools. So again, just enrollment numbers. This one right here is the biggest one that we had questions on in training. What grades are being served by programs? Now, this metric is the one that you get to control what you display. And you can, I hate to use the word track, but you can track anything that you want to on here. I want to show you in SIS what is being pulled here, because if you'll notice from my state screen, you see 504, EL, special programs, 21st century. And some of y'all are going, well, I had those kids, but I don't have any bars. That means that some districts actually set up what they called student programs inside of PowerSchool. So in the SIS section, there is, under courses and programs, there is this page called student programs. It's where you can keep an entry and exit record of student in literally whatever you want. Like, for example, here I have a student program that I created called Honor Society, because I want to track kids and how many of them are in Honor Society. Maybe you want to track how many kids are in EL without, you still have to use special programs, but if you want to be able to use like that, for a lot of people are saying, Stacey, can we have a 504 metric in here other than just there? Well, if you tag the students here, like if you created a program here and also put the 504 designation here, it would start building you those bars inside of that. So you get to define. So I have a SPED program. So if I do an entry date of, oh, that's a future date. Let's go back to this and hit submit. It will start keeping up with these. So see, I don't have an exit date inside of there. So whatever you have on this page for students is what is populating this metric right here. So you will get to populate any type of program that you want to keep up with. If you, I know a district reached out to me last year. They wanted to keep up with all of the students involved in extracurricular activities. And I said, well, there's 2 ways to do that. You can do it through activities where you're checking boxes, or you can do it through programs where you can do start and stop dates to see if they were in there. I have some districts who set up an alternative program designation in here so that they can track when students are entered into alternative school and come out, so they can see how often and how many. So this is kind of a free-for-all. You get to decide what kind of programs you want to see in here and get your counts on by creating programs and actually attaching them to the student record inside of SIS. And one of the things that myself and the coaches have talked about is doing a webinar that will show y'all how to set up these programs. So if y'all are interested in that, let me know in the chat if y'all really want that to happen so that y'all can learn how to use this function right here so that y'all can have this to be whatever metric you want it to be. Perfect. All right, so that's the overview. Let's go through the admissions. Pretty much these metrics right here are going to be correct as long as you know that your enrollment numbers are right, because it's just moving based on those tags that we saw at the beginning. So when you vet your demographics on the first page and vet your EL, then you know it's going to call these because it's pulling in literally new to this year, new to the last 5 days. So these should be correct. So if I were to click on these 10, you can go into the enrollment history of them to make sure that they were all enrolled in the last 5 days, and they all should have that homeless designation on them. So that means they're all in there in SIS. If you know that you have enrolled another kid that's not inside of here, and you can kind of use the enterprise reports to cross-reference some of these, it'll help you check those numbers. All of these really shouldn't need any validations on there because, like I said, if your enrollment numbers are right, these by default are going to be correct. Same thing with withdrawals, except we know that our dropouts and our no-shows are off right now because of the logic that PowerSchool has to update. So you can poke around at these, but you will be able to see what's on all the basic withdrawal codes for now. I'm going to let the screen populate. When it comes to these that are very skewed, like you've got a lot of lines right here, and you're like, well, but this one right here, what is this one? Oh, I don't want to do that. Go back. If you can figure out which line this is, you can turn it off. I'm almost betting it's promoted, so I'm going to click it off, and sure enough, now my lines have set up inside of there. All right, next set of dashboards is your attendance ones, because you will be able to start looking at these. Now, remember, as you click into any of these metrics, you're going to need to go down to the student level and validate both the meeting attendance and daily attendance to show that both sets of codes are coming over for your students. So again, current enrollment, last 30 days, 5 days, same type of metrics you're seeing pretty much anywhere else. That absent yesterday, same metric that pulled over from that attendance overview page. When it comes to attendance for each student race, so as long as we know attendance is calculating correctly, we know it's going to populate these races in here for us. The most frequent excuse types. This is how we found out that a lot of districts had created attendance codes that fell outside of the data code manual, because attendance codes were supposed to have been locked down from go live of implementation, but they were not. So we had to, all right, so now right quick, just thought about, go through, lock those down, but we've had to then contact districts, say, hey, you got to change those codes off of the students that you've assigned it to so that we can get PowerSchool to remove those. So these are going to be the counts, and these are going to be counts, and these seem very escalated. So one of the things I want you to know about this is it's looking at meeting and daily. It's not looking at just day by day. So it kind of can be confusing to people, especially when you see the large numbers. It's just showing any instance where that code was used. So if you're a 4-block class, a 4-block high school, and a kid brings a parent excuse, it's going to count for those 4 and for the day. So that's 5 instances of that code being used. So you have to keep in mind that these are very much scaled up in the way that these screens are presenting. Now, one of the questions that I had is, well, Stacy, can we get one that just shows daily codes and how they look? Not yet, but the answer is yes. So this is very much like the SIS. Y'all know how when we implemented SIS, it was very cookie cutter and it was handed to us. Think about all the plugins that we have installed or we have created from the state level for you to change and add things to it. We're going to be able to do the same thing to this right here. We've got the essentials, which is their vanilla package. And once we get it, we will have development tools where we can build our own dashboards and create more things than what we see here. Like I can tell you right now, huge piece of missing data here is career tech information. None of it's listed anywhere. We want career tech dashboards. We want certain dashboards. So we will be building other dashboards than what you see right here. So keep that in mind. period attendance. It's going to tell you which one of the periods. When you look at this from a district level, this can be crazy if your schools all use different period naming conventions. If they all use the same, then you're going to get beautiful graphs right here. But like you see right here, I get all kinds of different period names at a state level for this. So if you get different period names, you might want to drill to a school and look at it for a school to kind of see, but it'll let you know which period are most of your kids not attending in. So that's reading from meeting attendance. This is just looking at your overall attendance, those daily records from week to week to see are you improving or not improving from your your average daily attendance mechanism in here. Something else, if you didn't know, you can always zoom in to a set of weeks. So if I'm just looking at weeks 14 through 27 and I can reset it. So if you want to, scope down to a specific, you absolutely can, and you can turn these on and off to look at them. Also keep in mind every one of these metrics you can drill into so you can see what it'll list the ADA for all of your kids. And a lot of y'all have asked for that report. You're like, I want all of my kids and I want to know what their individual ADA is very easily. Well, all you got to do is come to this metric and click into it and it'll look at it for you. All right, chronic absenteeism. Personally, my favorite on here because this has been a missing report, a missing pool for a long time. I can't tell you how many times I get people who say, how do I find my chronic absenteeism students for this year? I love that it gives us a heat map because then you can start looking at, is it a neighborhood issue that you have with chronic absenteeism? So when it comes to chronic absenteeism, all of the metrics are going to point to the federal chronic absenteeism rules. And a lot of people don't even realize that there are federal chronic absenteeism rules. So what is that rule? First, a student has to be enrolled more than 10 days. Okay, this doesn't really hold to that, but when they're enrolled, federal rules look at any student who misses 10% of their enrollment days. So let's think of it like this. If a student has been enrolled for 10 days and they miss one date, that's 10%. That student is considered chronically absent by federal reporting rules. And believe it or not, we do have to report federal chronic absenteeism as well. It's just not in your accountability report card that everybody looks at. Everybody looks at Alabama's chronic absenteeism rule, which is the 18 days of students. So that's why we gave you two dashboards right here. We wanted you to see, according to federal rules, these are all of your students who are hitting the 10 days mark. And in fact, if you go to the three dots and go to more info and go to the definitions and it says click here for more, it will actually explain to you what those different levels mean. So anyone who is in, let me get out of that, this green, no absence issues, means that their ADA is, 100% to 95%. If they are in this yellow, then that means they're at this 95 to 92.5. If they're in orange, that means they're at 92 to 90. And if they've hit red, then they're with less than 90 because that means they've been absent 10% of their enrollment days. So everything's looking at those enrollment days when it comes to the student. But over here in this metric, we're looking at your Alabama reporting rules. And if I go to more info and go to the definitions, you'll see anybody in green means they have less than 7 daily absences. So you're good with those kids because you're not anywhere near being chronic for them. If they're yellow and trending, that means they have more than 7, but less than 13. If they're hitting orange, that means they have 13, but less than 18. And if they're chronic, that means they've hit that threshold of 18 days. So a lot of students haven't hit 18 days because we've only been in school X number of weeks. What I saw, it's funny, I was watching this last year as we were loading all the data in the spring. The closer we get to the end of the school year where we have 180 days inside of our calendar, these two numbers start evening out. And last year across the state, they were 1/1000th of a difference in the two numbers. That's how close they were. So that's why you see such a discrepancy, and it's because we don't have as many days in the calendar yet. Whereas these are looking at 10% of how many days they have now. Okay, so what about daily and meeting count? Welcome back from your 30-second break. Love those 1 hour marks. Yes, for those of y'all who have never been on a WebEx with me before, WebEx takes me away at the hour mark every time. But then it brings me back. So what I was saying is that it's looking at those daily records, which is why we've been real particular at making sure that you have that daily calculation running correctly so that it's calculating the right percent of the day in kids who hit that 49% mark and so forth. So with this right here, and it doesn't mean that we don't do others on top of it to build from DAVs and FTEs and things such as that later on. But here's what we have now for you to start looking. And if you need to know who those students are, remember all you got to do is click into that chart and it will tell you who is approaching those numbers already. Which grades? Now remember, why does it only show 6th grade right here? Because I've still got my little sticky filter that says I'm looking at 6th grade through all of this. So which grades are trending chronic, which subgroups. So we start breaking down by your race. So again, if you have dashes, then you're going to have a metric that's that anomaly that you're going to need to fix inside of there. Which schools have the most chronically absent? So you can look across the district. Which years have had the most chronically absent students? So this is going to give you that longitudinal view because some of y'all have been writing in your ASIP about chronic absenteeism and wanted to see, are you improving or not inside of there? It's going to make you doing those year-to-year comparisons so much better. And again, each one of these can be drilled down. School comparisons. So this is going to be I think this is going to take forever for me to load. Maybe not, because it's going to list each one of the schools across your district. This is going to be it from the state. This really just going to say from this year to this year, here's how your attendance rates are going. Let's see if we can wait on this to pull. And then the last one is classroom absences. I'm not going to click on that one, but it will show you your list of teachers and how many absences have been by period inside of their classrooms. So to give you an idea, if you have, you know, Stacy Royster's class that the kids are all just wanting to skip out of and not be there. So it'll give that principal a great view into the individual teacher's class and where kids being heavily absent and those who are not. If I thought about this one, I wouldn't have clicked on this metric because I forgot it takes forever. So any questions on attendance while I'm waiting on that? Because if I click off it, I'm just going to mess this whole up. So far, do we feel good about looking at enrollment, about looking at attendance on these? Keep in mind looking at daily attendance records, and you can always drill down to the student to look at their individual daily codes to make sure they're counting correctly. Oh, I bet I'm going to have to exit this. All right, y'all, let me exit and come back in. Or maybe I have froze my whole computer up now. Okay, let's load it back up. And it should not take y'all near as long to pull data at a district level as it does me from the state level. Okay, let's go to academics. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. I think the biggest thing was the chronic absenteeism and making sure that you understand that first metric of that federal and what it meant, because a lot of people didn't even know about that rule. So Josh, that's something that we're going to need to get dug into. So like if you have an example of a student where you see it clearly marked in CS, but it's showing as that, We're going to you send that to me, and if you want to go ahead and send it to me, I can go ahead and get that entered in a Jira board ticket for you. So if you see those weird things, and y'all, Josh just private message, he said on his demographic page he's got 2,300 kids that's got the double dashes, but when he drills down, he says he sees an ethnicity on them, and he sees that the race is checked and cis, so he doesn't know why. All right, so like right here, I've got an issue with this one. If you get one of these query errors, let me know, because I'm gonna have to put in a Jira board ticket to see why that data is not pulling. If you are drilling down and you see, hey, this data is in CIS, all you got to do is give me an example of like 1 or 2 kids that you see it on. One's enough for me to get a Jira board ticket going, so we can start tying up the loose ends of any of these scripts that we have pulling this data. So what you should be seeing here is it's looking at the different years, and it's looking at your A, B, C, D, and F counts inside of this, where you can drill down into each of those, and it's looking across all courses, and it's looking across each different grading period as well. So this is another one of those where you can see what looks like overinflated grades, but it's looking at every count. So right now, if you were looking at it, you should be looking at just your Q1 grades. As you post for Q2, it's going to add those together and say, okay, how many A's did you give across quarter 1 and quarter 2? How many, did you give across quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, F1, X1? Any of your buckets that you have created, it's going to look across all of those. When it looks at distribution over time, some of these you're going to see a semester 1, a semester 2, and then you might see a year long. If you have an elementary school where all you did was define the year long term, it will not break you down anything into semesters. Even if you have created buckets that say Q1, Q2, and you know they're in semester 1, unless you have a year and term tiered down to semesters and quarters, it will not break these down to semesters and quarters. It's just going to look at it as a holistic year. Some districts have asked, well, can I create years and terms drilled down if I don't put buckets in them at those elementary schools? Yes. In fact, a lot of districts do that just so they can get attendance by individual quarters on their report cards. So if you've ever had that issue and you're like, why can't I get a Q1 count of attendance and only get a year long? It's because you don't have years and terms built down. You don't have to have buckets for them, but you have to have them existing to be able to like cut data into those slices. So what are the GPAs of our students? Remember a while back, I asked districts to go in and create a GPA method for their schools. So depending on which method, and if you've set one up, if you're getting no data right here under GPA, that means you've not set up your GPA method for Unified Insights at your school. If you need those directions on how to do that, shoot me an email and I'll resend that to you. But that's only going to populate once you get that set up for your district. You get to choose whether you look at, the weighted GPA, the non-weighted GPA, and stuff such as that. And then it'll tell you how many students you have across those. You have quite a few different cards up here. So here we can go into the core subjects, and this is all going to be based on that mapping from that implementation here. Remember how I said we had to go to core subjects and look at what is considered a math, an English, a science, and so forth. So once those are coded correctly, these numbers are going to come out right to tell you how many students have a D and a F in any class that is designated an ELA class right now. How many students have a D and an F in any class that has a math class? This is going to help you keep an eye on your students that you might need some reinforcement for, or put in some type of program so that we can make sure that they are recharged and ready to pass this class. So we look across all 4 of the cores. You can look at pass rates. You've got all these 3 different right here, which is your pass rate, your grade level distribution for them. So if you want to know how many are within a certain grade range, and how have ELA grades changed over time, it's going to look at your different terms based on how you have those years and terms set up. And we did it for all 4 of them: ELA, math, science, and social studies. You get that same carbon copy kind of drill down in there. So don't start checking these until you do the district configuration meetings with the coaches, so that we can make sure we have your grade scales mapped so it's counting the right numbers on these. You shouldn't be too far off, but you could be a little bit off depending on how badly you've mapped to those. For AP, if you offer AP courses, this is going to give you a view into those who are taking them. Now, this is only if you actually have the AP courses scheduled in the student schedule. I know a lot of schools who have AP classes through college, um, and they don't put them in there, or they put a schedule filler class on the student record. If that's what you are doing, then you are not going to get accurate numbers on these. These are only going to reflect when you truly have created an AP English course and have kids enrolled in an AP English course. If you enrolled them and did a schedule filler because it's across the street at your community college, you're not going to get those counts. So you might want to think about how you're doing those so that you can count these more accurately. Kathy just asked, will the query errors be corrected by the coaches? No, they're just going to be reported by the coaches. Power School is going to have to fix everything with this, the Unified Insights team. So if you see those, you just report them, and we'll get those into the juror board for you. So again, this right here is just going to be in counts. So you can see from year to year, if you've got an AP initiative and you're trying to, build your numbers up, it'll tell you. It'll tell you which demographic is taking your AP courses. Students that are taking more than one AP course inside of here. And I'm no longer sticky down to just 6th grade. This visual shows 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th. So I think it is great that across the state there are 900 kids taking 5 AP courses. I love that shows that kind of metric right there. That's like on the behavior metric. One thing I love is it tells how many students have had multiple infractions, because a lot of people ask for that. Teacher analysis, this is going to give you your breakdown by teacher name. That will take forever for me to pull on this because it literally tries to pull every teacher in the state. When I go from the state level, you'll be able to see it from your district or your school, and it'll give you that same kind of color-coded combination to tell you how many A's, B's, C's, and D's by teacher, by course that they have. Standards, standard progress, the same thing. So if you're a standards-based school, you'll be able to see those markings inside of there. But I don't want to drill into those or pull up a specific district. So as you're checking those, just make sure that you've got your mappings right so that it will pull across each of these academic ones. When it comes to the assessments, so I'm just going to click into, let's say, ACAP summative. And take a look at these so you kind of get an idea. Every one of these assessments pretty much are going to have the same type of information. And I will tell you this, we are making some adjustments on these because right now, when it comes to the state achievements, it's looking at like the exact number, like it's looking at a scale score. We had conversations where we're going to start looking at these across the proficiency levels and counting them by who's in a level 1, 2, 3, 4 for you. So these, I will tell you right now, especially for the early literacy and for ACAP, you're probably going to see a lot of transition in these. So please pay attention to that weekly newsletter. You can click in them now and start seeing those raw scores as you go down into the kids. But as these transform, I will really be telling you how we're going to make these a lot easier and more beneficial for you to use for those students. Like I said, we're still loading a lot of these. If you don't see current year no data found, don't worry, because we're still backfilling those, and I will let y'all know through the newsletter when those are in there. But every one of these can be clicked on and you can go through. Also note that you can click on these headers, and some of them have multiple ones. The ones you're really going to like are these gainer, sticker, sliders pages. I hope that they really hit on those good bit in training, because it's going to tell you the kids from year to year that are either staying the course around the same thing, who've really gained, or who've really lost, backslid from year to year. So see, we're still loading some of this in right here for that. Okay, so not much that you're going to be able to do, but if you want to poke around in those, that's kind of what you're going to see inside of there. For digital learning, if you are a Schoology district, if you're not a Schoology district, you're not going to really see much here. But let's say that you have fully adopted Schoology, and so all your teachers are using it. This is going to be really good for you because it's going to tell you, are your students accessing the LMS? Are your teachers accessing the LMS? It's going to have student outcomes. It's going to say, these many students who have this many logins have these type of grades inside of here. you're going to get some very rich data out of that. If you're a district that has just said, well, teachers can use it if they want to, so students are not using it for every single course, then this is really comparing apples to oranges. It's not going to give you any really good information to use unless you just want to see number of logins. But if you're trying to do grade comparison to number of logins, well, I mean, a kid might have an A, but they only have one course and have a very low number of logins. That's not going to tell me much at all. But if you're wholeheartedly adopted it, it's going to tell you how much activity and what's going on. So again, I've got another SQL error right here. Active sessions per day, staff activity, student activity, not going to pull that in because it's going to start listing names and it'll take a while from the state level. But go into those if you're a heavy Schoology user, and you should see your metrics popping up so that you get a view into how often your teachers and students are using this and how well your students are actually doing in the classes based on how many logins they are doing. So Pam, you said, how do I see iReady data? How do I add it? It's not, we're loading all that data for you. So we are still loading assessment data from the state level. Assessment and behavior data are still being worked on. Literacy Act data still being built. I do want to draw attention to this retention metric right here. So we are tagging to the 23-24 school year, which is our current year. I don't think anybody should be retained because nobody's school year is over yet. However, we have some students, 26 across the state, who are already showing as being retained. So if you have students showing retained for this year, you might want to check on that to see why you have a student record with an enrollment record of a retention R, because something's not right in that. You'll need to look at the transfer info page of those students. One of the things I would say to do here is to swap the year. So like go look at last year. So I'm filtering it to 22, 23. And now I'm seeing more of a realistic view of how many students were retained from kindergarten through third grade, because you know that's one of the reporting metrics that we have to do for the Literacy Act. And again, these are drillable, so you'll be able to click on and see who those students are in your district to see, did you actually retain the right students, or is a student still marked as retained that you actually ended up promoting after summer school, to make sure that those are counting correctly. As you are putting the good cause exemptions, which were not used yet or shouldn't have been used last year, but yet I'm finding that some districts did go ahead and enter that in. Those are going to start populating. So all of these are going to be based on those Literacy Act. Remember, kind of in the middle of the act, there were those, I believe it was 10, was it 13 or 10 items this like got to be state level reported, where y'all are going to have to fill out the spreadsheets and send them to the state. Well, that's why we bought this program, so it could create and calculate all of that data for you. So as long as you have entered that information on that compliance page, oops, excuse me, academic records, legislative acts page, this is what it's pulling. So it's going to pull all that promotion retention information here along with what's on the transfer info page, the dyslexia. So see right here, the reading deficiencies, this is going to be pulling from all that state assessment data to let you know who is showing as a deficient student. For Screen for Dyslexia, if you have numbers populating here, it's because you actually filled out the dyslexia information here. By the way, do y'all see a new? This is not in yours yet, but coming soon is going to be the Lexi's Law indicator, because that's got to be pulled in there as well. So you'll see my Screen for Dyslexia, how many students were screened, how many were screened beyond, how many are in, I got to get that, we've got to work on getting those names right there. How many are deficiency, who have additional screening, which specific intervention programs have been attached to students. So see, from the state level, we can see which type of intervention program is being used across there, and it just gives us all those counts. So you're going to see more things built out on the Literacy Act page as we start getting more of the data from these pages built into there. There will also be a Numeracy Act. So where we have the Literacy Act dashboards, there will be Numeracy Act dashboards that will then start pulling in all of this when we start entering Numeracy Act information toward the end of this school year. So more to come on that. For the student list, this is kind of where it will literally list every kid in your district, and it gives you that spreadsheet view. I'm not going to click on it here because I don't want to show any students, but it allows you to like search for a student, to drill down for students, to filter for students, and get information and go into those profiles. And then we have the attendance and behavior metric, which again, because behavior is still being built out, let it spin. It's just doing kind of a comparison. It gives like a kind of a widget board that you can choose what you want to see from where inside of there. And actually, I'm going to stop that one and see if it'll let me go back here. When it comes to the one thing that I didn't go over was the behavior overview, but just because we're still doing some of the mappings on there, but you should start seeing the counts of your like major infractions, and it start being titled to your SIR and your local use. Now, one of the questions that a lot of districts ask in training is, can we have a breakdown of the local use? Because right now it's grouping every local use together as one. Right now it doesn't. The way that the vanilla one does, it really just kind of pulls those together. After we get this program handed off to us and we get our development, then yeah, we might just do a whole different dashboard that's just a breakdown of local use codes and how often they're being used and things such as that. So that's a huge possibility that might be coming. So yes, see York, if you've got dyslexia screening information entered, but it's not showing on that screen, that will need to be reported so we can make sure PowerSchool checks your ETL linkage to make sure that it is pulling correctly. Those are the kind of data validation anomalies we're going to be looking for from you all, because I can't see into your SIS to know if it's really there or not. So that's why we just need y'all poking into these to let us know what's there, what's not, and what seems to be miscalculating. And I think I broke up by just like start. Here we go. When it comes to the student overview for behavior, this is that same chart that was on that first page. So you're just going year by year. You can kind of get an idea. And I will say I checked these against a district, and these seem to be pretty correct from what I was seeing inside of there. You're going to see the terminology that you have used for your district. See, I've got an issue on this one right here where, you know, what's being changed. So if you get a query error right here, let me know. How are the use of access changing week over week? So as you get into a week view of which type of actions you have been putting on there, then you'll be able to see those. And literally, once we get those mappings done, these right here should all self-regulate. There's not much checking you'll have to do inside of these once we get those mappings done. Where is the one? This is the one that I know a lot of districts have been asking for in SIS, and it's really almost impossible to pull. But they wanted to know how many students are repeat offenders. How many students? So this right here is telling me I've got 13,000 students across the state with with 2 infractions, 5,000 with 3, all the way to I've got 69 students who've had more than 15 incidents this year already. So you're able to see which students are habitual offenders when it comes to your incident management. So you might want to keep an eye, and again, every one of these you can click on and go down into. If you want to look at the locations, remember these are defined by the state. I did hear that somebody said during one of the trainings, oh, you can configure those in the SIS. Not in Alabama, you can't. You can't make cafeteria, parking lot, things like that, because we have state defined locations, and it's going to break those apart based on location, so you can kind of see those. You can go into severe incidents. I really like this one right here because it tells you, you know, the big things. Are you reducing alcohol possession? Are you reducing fighting? Are you reducing threats and harassment, assault, things like that? It brings apart each one of the tags that you've used. So bomb threats, you know, how many times you've attached bomb threat to one of your incidents. And you can see from 21, 22, the last 3 years that we've been in PowerSchool, how the numbers, whether they are increasing or decreasing. And you know, we want to see that downward trend on all these. And you can see whether that's happening or not inside of here. So this one's a really good one that I think y'all are going to like. And then a breakdown by code and by ethnicity by code to kind of go through. So as we get those mappings done, you'll see those show up pretty easily, and they should be all true inside of there. This will also tell you, you know, number by school so that I help you out, incidents by grade level, incidents by days of the week, time of the day, so that you know, do you have a very big issue at the beginning of the day, middle, or end of the day? just some insights that you've not really had before. So I know that's a lot of me talking, kind of going through everything, but that's the next steps we need from districts. So PowerSchool coaches will be making contact to the people identified here, and you have access to edit this. So if there's somebody, like if somebody's changed, if Greg has left and somebody's replaced them, then we need that person's new name inside of here to make sure that the right people are being contacted. And I'll put this link in here one more time. It's also in the weekly newsletter each week so that you have it, because we want y'all to start, getting your teams together and looking through this. Hopefully by now you are adding in users who have access to this. And remember, as you give them their access, it takes overnight before they can actually log in. And then they'll be able to help you go through and see. And write down, make notes of any anomalies that you're seeing. Heidi just sent one, says they have a GPA issue. So when they look at a GPA and it shows differently, then we'll go through and figure out and make sure that we're connecting the right one. Okay. So any questions from anyone on it? Next step is watch for that email from the coaches. They're going to go through those configs to see anything that's not mapped, help you get them mapped. And then start making lists of anything that y'all are seeing out of the blue, because y'all know your data. We can kind of cherry pick and get rules built in here, but we've got to have eyes laid on it to make sure that it is correct. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.